Let's actually make a managed C# and a C++ Windows runtime component actually work together to do something. I'm going to start out again with our Hello World application. Let's run it again to remember how it works. Type here to say, what's your name? And I'll put in Michael. And I'll click Say Hello. And it takes the name that you put into this text box, puts the word greetings on the front, and puts an exclamation point on the back end. And if we look at the code, you'll remember how it does that by, down here on line 27, it says text block2.text equals the string greetings plus the contents of the text box plus an exclamation point. Now, we're going to add a Windows Phone runtime component that adds 2 exclamation points to the end of a string. The reason for doing this is, first of all, to show you how you can manipulate data from managed code inside unmanaged code, and also how you pass parameters, particularly strings. Because Microsoft has a number of examples about how to integrate managed C# or VB.NET code with C++ code, but they don't have any examples at all about how to manipulate strings. So by taking this course, you're going to get some secret information that even you can't get from Microsoft. So as we saw before, to add a Windows Phone runtime component to our solution, we'll right-click here, come down and select Add, select New Project. Under Windows Phone, we're going to pick Windows Phone Runtime Component. Windows Phone Runtime Component 1 is a big long name, so we're going to call it EX1, just to make it shorter. So we're going to click OK. Now you see we have a .h file and a .cpp file, just like before. But in this case, we're going to add a method to our class here. Now our method's going to take in a string and return a string. So we begin by saying platform : string up arrow, and that's the way you reference a string in unmanaged code. And then Windows Phone Runtime Component, because that's the name of our class, : add exclamation points, and we're just going to say add EX. And it takes a string as an argument, platform : string up arrow, and we'll call it ORIG for our original string. Now you notice that add EX has the red squiggles underneath it saying that Windows Phone Runtime Component has no member add EX. That's because this is C++. We'll need to copy this line, come back to our .h file, add it in here as one of our public methods. There we go. And add a semicolon at the end of it. And when we come back to our CPP file, you'll notice that the red squiggles are gone. Now let's make it do something. So the way we do that is we're going to allocate a static string that has the 2 exclamation points we want to add, and then we're going to use the concatenation method to concatenate our original value with that to create a return value. So we say string up return value equals ref new string open brace L quote 2 exclamation points close quote paren semicolon. Now, doesn't that look fun for all of you managed C# programmers? But that's the syntax you have to use in order to be able to create a string in C++ inside one of these Windows Phone managed runtime components. Now that we've got that, we can say return value equals return value, invoke its concat method, and put in our original string and return value itself, which is the 2 exclamation points, and then we'll return that. So that's our C++ code. Now let's go back and do the process of adding a reference to this particular class to our managed code. Then we'll build everything, and then we'll call this method. So we'll come back to here. We'll go to the references. We'll right-click and say Add Reference. Go to the solution and select EX1, since that's the name of our project. And then, as you remember from the previous video, we right-click here and rebuild the solution. So we've got everything built. Instead of putting it directly into this text block, we're going to say string S1 equals greetings plus your text box content. Take the exclamation points off. Then we're going to allocate an instance of our Windows Phone runtime component, but we don't have the using. So we're actually going to say ex1.Windows Phone runtime component. ex1 equals new ex1 Windows Phone runtime component. Looks like that. Then we can say S1 equals ex1.addEx and pass in our S1 string. And finally, we'll set it into the text block. Text block2.text equals S1. And the reason we did it this way is because when we were debugging, and the first time you do your debugging with a Windows Phone runtime component, you'll probably want to verify that things actually come back the way you expect them to. In our case, I'm confident this is going to run. Let's give it a try. We'll come back here to our text box. I'll put in my name, and we'll click Say Hello. And you can see down here, not only does it say Greetings Michael, it has 2 exclamation points at the end, which came from our C++ Windows Phone runtime component. Now, obviously, this is a trivial example of a Windows Phone runtime component, but it gives you the sense of everything you need to know in order to be able to hook up some C++ code to your existing or to your new C# managed code. So that's it for Windows Phone and native code. Coming up in the next chapter, we'll talk about exploring all the built-in controls and additional functionality of Windows Phone.